This week's video is on some of the teas in China roses that I have grown or currently am growing. The first rose is Monsieur Tillier, a pink tea rose from 1890s. Um, for me, I've grown it in Oregon and in Missouri. Um, in Oregon, I didn't have any cold issues. Um, Here in Missouri, it has the last two winters, this one and last, it has turned black and had to grow back from the base of the plant. Um, Oregon, where I was growing it, was zone 8. Here in Missouri, it's a 5B, 6A. So take that at face value. It can get a big bush. The colors are pretty variable. I found that the colder the weather, the lighter colors it's been. It does get darker. Uh, I saw a Monsieur Tillier plant in the Sacramento City Cemetery back in 2017, and it was quite a bit darker than any of the flowers I got in Oregon. Um, but it is one of my favorite tea plants. I do recommend growing this if you are able to grow tea roses. Um, Definitely worth one to have. This next rose, while technically may or may not be a China or a tea, I'm not really sure where I should stick it, so I'm going to stick it with the China teas. It's Fortune's Double Yellow. Um, I only grew it in Oregon. It was an owner rose, so it was a little slow. So I got to see it when it was quite young. Um, the warnings that it's thorny is very accurate. It's a thorny bush. I did see it in the Sacramento City Cemetery as well, where it was quite a bit bigger bush, so it can get quite big. Cite it as with that in mind. Um, I don't think I would try to grow this in Missouri. I think it would be too tender, but um, I enjoyed while having it. It has some history to it. Robert Fortune brought it back to Europe in the 1800s from China. But if you're in an area that warm weather roses grow, I would say if you are able to fit up a large plant, I go for it. And the next rose I'm going to talk about is one I'm probably going to mispronounce. I pronounce it Bon Silene. Um, it's a tea rose from France. Uh, I've only grown it in Oregon. It didn't get super big for me, but I didn't have it for all that long. It was a nice rose. It performed well, bloomed throughout the season. Um, the next rose is Smith's Parish. It was found on the island of Bermuda. Uh, could be a tea rose. It's usually classified underneath found as Bermuda rose, but you can also classify it as a tea. Um, I only grew it in Georgia, in Atlanta. It was a nice bush. It got up to about 3 feet tall, 3 feet wide in the 3 years that I had it there before I had to move. It does get white flowers, also red, white with red on them as well. I have heard of them getting solid red as well. So there is interest if you like the changeable flowers to it. The next rose is Florence Bower's Pink Tea. I bought this rose at the Sacramento City Cemetery uh, rose sale back in 2017. I only grew it in Oregon. It was in the ground for almost 2 years when I had to leave. Um, it actually grew up our chain link fence and then branched back over itself. So it's kind of like a weeping ish form after it got over the top of the chain link fence. So that was kind of cool. Nice pink rose. If there you can find, I know that at one point it was for commerce. If you can find it, I definitely recommend growing it. If you're in an area that grows teas, I don't know how well it would do in a colder climate, but tea roses in general are not fans of cold climates. The next rose is the rose that was sold to me as Old Blush. Um, Old Blush is a pretty historic rose, one of the four studs that came from China to Europe. back in the late 1700s and early 1800s. I believe Old Blush, you'll often see a date of 1793, but it has been disputed that it might have been earlier known in Europe in some areas. Um, I grew Old Blush in Oregon and Georgia. Uh, I have not grown it in Missouri. One of the Rose Society members here in Missouri has grown it and says that it does not do well here in our 5B, 6A zone. Um, so while I do have teas here in Missouri, I have not decided to grow Old Blush as of right now. It is a good rose to have, but if you're in a warmer climate than 5B, 6A, I would definitely recommend growing. The next rose I bought at the Sacramento City Cemetery rose sale in 2017 um, is called Malespina Red China. I may be mispronouncing that. Um, it's a found red china. In the year and a half, 2 years that I had it, or almost 2 years I had it, it got a foot and a half tall. I'm assuming it would probably grow bigger than that if I had grown it longer. But I did have to move and leave that garden behind. Uh, Definitely a nice rose to have if you're able to find it somewhere. I would recommend growing it. The next rose is Mutabilis. It's a China rose. Uh, it starts out yellow and fades to pink. It's really pretty. It's single flowered. I've grown it in Atlanta and in Oregon. And when I lived in the Atlanta area, I would often find it at people's houses trained on walls as a climber. It got considerably bigger than it did in Oregon. Um, it like China's, it does like the warmer climates. So if you're in that type of climate, definitely recommend growing this rose. The next rose is Hubner's Plot Tea. I bought it at the Sacramento City Cemetery back in 2017. Again, I only had it for a year and a half, 2 years ish. By the time I had to leave that garden. For me in Oregon, it remained somewhat small. It wasn't near as fast growing as um, the other roses that I got from the city cemetery rose sale. A nice rose, um, but if you're able to find it and you're in a warm climate, it's worth growing. The next rose is Oneto Home Saffron, another rose that I bought from the Sacramento City Cemetery rose sale back in 2017. A very nice color to it. It stayed somewhat small. I have seen some hypothesis that this may actually be a China and not a tea, but not 100% sure on that. If there's a place that you can find it or buy it from somewhere, and you live in an area that grows teas and Chinas, worth recommending just for the color alone and of itself. The next rose is probably going to mispronounce it as well. Sorocco House Lavender. I bought it from the Sacramento City Cemetery as well in 2017. When I left it a couple years later, um, it was probably 3 feet tall. It's a tea rose. Uh, Something about this rose was it changed colors, not necessarily shape of flowers, but definitely colors quite a bit. Sometimes it looked like they were two different roses on the same plant. So I could see why identifying this would definitely be a hard task to do. Definitely rose worth growing. I've heard that it's in the Madame Lombard family group of tea roses. So if you're not able to get this, maybe Madame Lombard would be a suitable rose. I've never grown that, so I can't speak for sure on that though. The next rose is Safrano, a tea rose from the 1830s. And um, I've grown it in Oregon and here in Missouri. It doesn't like the 5B, 6A winters that we get in Missouri. It was fine with the Zone 8 winters in Oregon. It's a nice rose. It's got nice purple reddish growth, and for the new growth, one that I'd recommend. When we did have a couple mild winters here in Missouri, it got pretty big. I mean, probably 10 feet tall. So just keep that in mind in your sighting of this bush. The next rose is Fang Yon, which is probably mispronounced. Um, it's a tea rose that's bred by Paul Barton in the early 2000s. Uh, this rose I grew in Oregon along with a half sibling of Licorice Tea, which is the next rose. Both of those were bred by both Licorice Tea and this one Fang Yon were bred by Paul Barton. Um, one Fang Yon caught the eye of my daughter, and she claimed that rose bush as hers. Um, so if you like pink roses, this or dark pink roses, this is one that would definitely grab your attention. My daughter loved the rose, but sadly we had to leave it a few years ago. This next rose is Licorice Tea. It was bred by Paul Barton as well in the early 2000s. It shares a parent with the one Fang Yon, one parent with it. The T parent was the shared parent of those two. Um, this one, for me, when I grew it in Oregon, was very vigorous. It really liked where I had it. It wound up it acted as a climber, so it wound up being about 15 feet by the time I left after having it for 3 years or so. Um, nice yellow color, light yellow color to it. I liked it a lot. I actually did try to grow it in Missouri. Unfortunately, I got it in the fall and learned the hard way that planting it as a owner rose, young owner rose, is the fall is too late in the year, and the winter did it in. Um, Definitely a rose that's worth growing and finding. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the video.